Yesterday, I think it was, I asked this provocative question. What is wrong with Stephen King? How is it that he can write all these best-selling books, and yet when he tweets, he looks like a moron? Now, it could be the problem's on my end. Can't rule that out. So one of the possibilities is it's just me, but I know a lot of you see it too, and if you have the same cognitive dissonance or confirmation bias I do, well, maybe you see it the same way. But to me, it looked like there was a huge disconnect between the way he tweets and the quality of the commercial products he's creating. Now, I don't have this feeling about everybody who disagrees with me, right? Just taking the prior point, if Jon Stewart disagreed with me on something, I don't know if he does, but if he did, I would say, well, there's a smart person with a smart background saying things that I disagree with, but it's not because he's dumb or drunk or something, right? Like you never say to yourself, Jon Stewart must be drunk today. At least it always sounds smart, even if you disagree with it. But Stephen King's different. He doesn't sound smart when he disagrees with me. It sounds like there's something wrong. And so I asked Joshua Lisec for an opinion, and I retweeted his thread in which he goes into some detail, and I would recommend it to you on the following basis. You could make an entire college class around Joshua Lisec's tweet thread. There's so much in there. There's so much technique put into the thread that you should read it for the technique, even more than, I think, the topic. The topic is really interesting, but the technique he puts into it is that's just a lesson. And what you're seeing in particular from Joshua, I like to call this out whenever I see it, is somebody who has intentionally built a talent stack, which is a set of talents that work well together. So he's a ghostwriter for a number of people. So the first thing he gets for free is that he ghostwrites for people who are on opposite sides of things. So he actually has the experience of writing arguments that are opposite of each other. Do you know what that does for your brain? Good stuff, right? If all you did is say, I'm going to be a ghostwriter for people on the political left or the political right, you would talk yourself into their point of view by writing it over and over. That's scientifically demonstrated in studies, by the way. If somebody is asked to just write down an opinion, physically write it, that is not their own opinion, they can actually talk themselves into the opposite of their opinion just by the process of writing down the other opinion. It's a thing. Now, you could argue that, like most studies, they're not reproducible, but I choose to believe that's probably true because it agrees with everything I know about brains. But Joshua takes business on both sides, and so he gets to see both sides of pretty big topics. That's a talent. He's also demonstrates probably the best marketing I've ever seen on Twitter. I've never seen anybody market better on Twitter. Case in point, the very thread I'm talking about gets you all hooked on the topic, but then he embeds a little advertisement later down in the thread when you can easily accept it. Because he's created enough value for you that when you get to something that's clearly a little promotional bit, you're like, okay, I actually am interested in that. Because everything else was so good, good to know that he's got a product too. And then, of course, he's learned persuasion, hypnosis, I think. You can see reciprocity built in. That's a persuasion technique. So, for example, he mentioned something good about me in the thread. Well, what's that going to do? Well, first of all, it's going to make me retweet it. If I hadn't already liked the content, I was going to retweet it anyway. But that would have been a little extra kicker. So you can see all the techniques of persuasion in it. You can see all the writing technique, which is, just the top level commercial quality you could ever see. Marketing, 100%. And it's just a strong package. So you should read it for that reason. I'll give you just a preview. He starts with 3 theories about why Stephen King could be tweeting so differently than the quality of work suggests. One would be substance abuse. That's in the public domain. We know that he was a long-term substance abuser, Stephen King was. We know he had a serious accident that presumably caused some head trauma. Does that make you the same when you're done? We don't know, but it's certainly an open question. But the more interesting part which he develops is the fiction writers have overactive imaginations. And if you write fiction, and in the first chapter, I think this is the example that Joshua uses, if there's a rifle hanging over the fireplace in the first chapter, it's going to be important later on, because that's how fiction is written. But in the real world, you see all of these things that don't mean anything, and they never will mean anything. They're just coincidences. And all the coincidences could be interpreted by a fiction writer who has wired their brain to think everything matters. It's just an automatic thing. If you're in that mode, everything matters. Every piece of evidence, we'll have it roll, and later on in the book. And then you look at the real world, and you see all this stuff that really doesn't mean anything. And suddenly your confirmation bias just kicks in and says, yeah, this means something. Oh yeah, I'm picking up the hints. Oh, a lot of people don't see this, but I'm seeing that gun over the fireplace in the first chapter. It's an interesting theory. And it's based on the fact that whatever you're doing often is is the way you wire your brain. If you have a brain that's looking at is looking for your victimhood, what do you do to your brain? Hey, today I think I'll go out and look for some victimhood of myself. And then tomorrow I'm going to go out and look for some victimhood. And hey, there's some other people talking. What's their victimhood? You can talk yourself into that being your operating system, meaning your go-to reflexive way of thinking, even without trying. It's completely accidental. So we've got an entire education system that doesn't understand some of the most basic things about how the human mind works and how to program. Not even the basics. I wonder if there are anybody else who doesn't understand the basics of how brains work. I wonder if I might mention something later on in my presentation. Foreshadowing. Well, Arizona had some elections, or the primaries, I guess, yesterday. Blake Masters looks like he's going to be the candidate on the Republican side for Senate. He is a Trump-endorsed guy. The last I checked, Kari Lake was ahead, but it's getting close, right? Is it pretty close now? The spelling for Joshua's last name is Lisec. Pretty sure if you Google that, you'll get his Twitter account.